Good evening and welcome to this Scrutiny Committee meeting of Burnley Borough Council on the 11th of February 2021. Committee members present are Councillor Andrew Tatchell, Chair of Scrutiny, Councillor Marcus Johnson, Vice Chair of Scrutiny. Also present are Councillor Howard Baker, Paul Campbell, Tom Commis, Dale Ferrier, Andy Fewings, B. Foster, Shabana Khan, Gordon Lishman, Margaret Lishman, Tony Martin, Lorraine Mahana and Andrew Newhouse. Also observing Councillor Roper. Executive members present are Councillor Mark Townsend, Leader of the Council, Councillor Sue Graham, Portfolio Holder for Resources, Councillor Leanne Pate, Portfolio Holder for Health and Wellbeing. Council officers present are Mick Cartledge, Chief Executive, Lukman Patel, Chief Operating Officer, Howard Hamilton-Smith, Head of Finance and Property, Rob Dobson, Head of Policy Engagement. Richard Brown, Community Safety Officer, is also present. Christine Wood is a Democracy Officer. Mark Hindman is streaming the meeting, and myself, Chris Gay, is hosting the meeting. Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome everybody to February Scrutiny Committee meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies.
I have received apologies from Councillor Royal, Chair.
Councillor Royal, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Item 2, to approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Move them, Chair.
Move those as a true record.
Thank you.
With seconder.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, additional items of business.
There are no additional items, Chair.
Thank you. Item 4, declarations of interest.
I've not received any declarations, Chair.
Unreceived, fine.
Sorry, Chair.
Item 5, exclusion of the public. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair. I think there has been declarations of interest from Councillor Andy Fewings. I think he emailed Democracy Team and himself. And did you just want to go through your interests?
Fine.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, so it's item 14, and basically I've said that it's other interest, not a pecuniary interest. A tenancy on St James's Street. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, you've logged that with Democracy. Okay.
Thank you. I'll record that.
Okay. Item 5, exclusion of the public. As per agenda.
As per agenda.
Okay. Item 6, public question time. Any requests received?
No, Chair. None received.
Thank you. Item 7, public items. Notes of keynote decisions and private meetings. Members will notice, looking at what's upcoming, we have got some business which in the last item of the day we dealt with as far as things that should have been coming, but because of pandemic reasons and others have been put on to the next meeting, with 2 meetings left in the council year. The one that, or 1 or 2 that I picked up before we actually move into this and before I ask members for their reaction, was the Burnley Leisure Trust. Now we've got Burnley Leisure Trust on the March meeting. They've asked, I mean, we do need to actually run the scrutiny this council year. They've been putting it back. They're in a position to come to the March meeting, I'm told. If you look at the future decisions to be done, there's one about Burnley Leisure Trust loan facility. Just to ask the officers, is that due to come in February, as it says there, or is there slippage on that? I'd just be a bit sort of not having had the full report from the Leisure Trust, and then this loan request coming in, whether there needs to be some sort of marriage between the two.
I can answer that.
Can you tell me? Yeah.
Councillor Tatchell, I can answer that question for you. First of all, The intention is to bring any report on the Burnley Leisure Trust Loan Facility Agreement to the scrutiny. It's not going to be decided at February's executive. The notice of key decisions has been updated since the scrutiny agenda was published, so it's incorrectly showing as February. In relation to the March's annual report, that is the annual report that scrutiny get on an annual basis.
Just the answer I was hoping for. Thank you. And looking at the decisions that are coming up, I think the only one that took my eye after that was the tree planting policy one, which was anticipated in March. Now we meet on the 17th. I'm just wondering whether the decisions are going to be made before or after that.
We'd be happy to bring that to Scrutiny Committee if members of the Scrutiny Committee would like to look at that paper.
I'm sure they would. Thanks very much for that. Any member? Sorry for launching in, but I just saw them today and thought, well, I need to ask those questions. Any member like to ask a question on?
Yes, Chairman. Sorry, first of all, apologies for being late. But secondly, I believe I sent to you a suggestion for something to be on for a working group. I have never had a reply from anyone as yet.
That's okay, because I did take that email. When it comes around to working groups, item, which one is it?
Sorry, I'm obviously precipitating the event.
Scrutiny review groups, yes. When we get to item 16, all will be revealed. Any other member on notice of key decisions?
No request, Chair, and no one signalling.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for helping there, Lockman. Much appreciated. Item 8, community safety report. That's Richard Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So the community safety annual report, which we have a duty to in accordance with the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. I'm just going to take you through quickly the headlines and give a quick overview of activity that's taken place in the last 12 months and some of the things that have been planned for the coming year. So as part of the Pennine Community Safety Steering Group, Pennine Lancashire Community Safety Strategy priorities for 2018-2021 are as follows: maintain low crime and antisocial behaviour levels, keeping young people and adults with vulnerabilities safe, tackling the causes of crime through prevention and early intervention, targeting repeat offenders and those causing greatest harm, and keeping our roads safe. These priorities are set on a 3-year cycle, so work is currently ongoing to oversee reassessment of those during 2021. Local community safety is delivered through multi-agency tasking and coordinating group, MATAC, which is chaired by Councillor Afrasiab Anwar. That meets on a monthly basis, and this group is where the majority of local activities in response to emerging threats and sort of predetermined priorities is organised using a combination of partnership, intelligence and analytical data provided by the Constabulary. So a quick run through the summary of key points: the community safety projects and activity for 2021. So all local activities, as I said, are agreed through through the MATAC meeting. So that's predictive threats as well as responding to emerging threats, and using that wide partnership base to be able to respond effectively to them. Officers have continued to support both local and Pennine CSP priorities. These priorities are monitored through thematic groups established across Pennine Lancashire CSP, and they continue to deliver against local priorities and concerns as well. Work continues to contribute to delivery of the current 5 key strategic priorities, and over the last nearly 12 months now, these groups, as with many of the local working groups, have met virtually, and work has continued to progress. For instance, the Low Crime and Antisocial Behaviour Group, Pennine Group, is chaired by Joanne Swift, Head of Street Scene, as well as Chief Inspector John Bullis of Lancashire Constabulary. Moving on to more local matters, 6 new Alligator schemes are being funded through the Council's Capital Programme, which will cover 126 properties in the borough. These are determined by looking at high levels of crime and antisocial behaviour. So those schemes will go into Gawthorpe Ward, Baines House, Stoniholme, Rosegrove, with Lower House, Trinity and Queensgate. In the last 12 months, a borough-wide gating public space protection order has been introduced, which has been a move that many local authorities, both across Lancashire and across the country, have gone to in a way of streamlining and making more efficient the way that we manage the legal aspect of our gating across the borough. This won't have any impact on how the schemes are delivered to local residents, but is more making best use of the legislation that we now have at our disposal for managing the legal aspect of all of that. The Home Office, I think one of the big news stories from the last 12 months has been the Home Office's Safer Streets Fund, where Burnley was awarded a near maximum grant of £549,500 for a project based in small parts of Burnley Wood and Bank Hall wards. The bid was chosen as the primary bid for Lancashire, and there was a analytical approach to identifying those priorities, but this is on the back of a lot of hard work from Pennine Lancashire Community Safety Partnership to be able to bring this funding in. The project itself will look at home security around, and is indeed already ongoing, looking at home security around properties within the focus areas, as well as improvements to green spaces and the amenity of the area, so areas such as local parks and grassed areas. There'll be further alligating schemes, so there'll be 11 more alligating schemes that will be going into the 2 project areas, and there's an improvement to the strategic CCTV coverage within those areas, with 6 new locations going in. So it's hoped as well to be working with the community. Obviously, there has been an impact as a result of the pandemic, because I think the 2 areas are areas that have been, strongly hit, but the work has continued, and some of the work streams within that project are nearing completion now. So we hope to see some long-lasting benefit to the community itself. Burnley Council as well, in conjunction with other East Lancashire districts and the Police and Crime Commissioner, have contributed funding to an initiative called Operation Provide. So this provides dedicated IDFA, independent domestic violence advocate, support for police responding to incidents of domestic abuse. So it will assist and aid the ability for support services to make contact with victims at the earliest possible opportunities. So there's 2 IDFAs being employed via that project. So that's Burnley, Blackburn with Darwin, Hyndburn, Rosendale, that have all funded that. Locally, the youth panel continues to operate virtually, and that brings together statutory and non-statutory local youth service providers to deliver a coordinated approach to youth activity and youth provision across the borough. And I think it's the dedication of these organisations through the pandemic to keep these pieces of work going under testing times has been really impressive, and has managed to, I think locally, the proportion of of antisocial behaviour that would ordinarily be under normal circumstances would account for about a quarter of all antisocial behaviour calls to the police, has seen a reduction to about, I think it's about 15% locally now. So there has been a reduction in youth-related ASB incidents, and it's continued to deliver youth intervention, diversionary activity across the borough in various guises throughout the last 12 months. The Town Centre Offender Group continues to work together to target town centre individuals, so prolific shoplifters, aggressive beggars and other antisocial behaviour, antisocial individuals in the town centre, and that work's continued. That group also links in with the next project, which is an expanded police Mossavo unit, which looks at prolific and high-risk offenders, principally around violent crime and high-level acquisitive crime, so prolific burglars. And that piece of work is ongoing as well, and it's being delivered, and again is supported through Burnley and other East Lancashire partners. Last year there was a Youth Endowment Fund grant through Pennine Lancashire CSP of 343,000 for a programme called Pause for Thought, which is diverting young people away from criminal behaviour. Now that did have to, unfortunately that had to be paused due to COVID, because it is face-to-face work done with these young people, but now there's been a lot of work put in place to be able to enable that to move forward, and it has begun again, and is taking referrals. Pennine Lancashire CSP has launched its website, which has now gone live to give the community safety partnership a much broader sort of impact and branding. As part of our sort of work towards dealing with domestic abuse, the council had commissioned a group called Afterthought Theatre to develop a fresh approach to awareness raising around domestic abuse and the way that council staff will come into contact, regardless of what area of the council, members of the public or in any walk of life, and it's about raising that sort of awareness. 2 sessions were managed to be delivered before lockdown commenced, so we're now working with them to develop alternative methods of being able to deliver that that project. In the 2020 resident satisfaction survey, it was noted that concerns for around teenagers hanging around had fallen from 58% in 2019 to 48% in 2020. Similarly, people using or dealing drugs had fallen from 62% in 2019 to 54%. Both of these issues remain priorities for local partners, and a great deal of work goes into a multi-agency approach to dealing with some of these issues that do affect communities. As part of the review as well to the Scrutiny Committee, just give a brief overview of performance relating to crime and antisocial behaviour in the borough. Obviously, I think the coronavirus pandemic has had quite an impact on crime, recorded crime and antisocial behaviour in a very different manner. So in respect to recorded crime in 2020, there was actually a 10% fall in reports to the police, and this has been driven by a very significant reduction of 28% in regards to all acquisitive crime within Burnley, which was the largest decrease in East Lancashire. Now, obviously, that relates very much to the different scenario that we now find ourselves in, where people are at home a lot more. So there has been that is a trend across the county, but it's been particularly marked in Burnley. And whereas you've seen that marked reduction in crime rates during 2020, there has been a significant increase in reports of antisocial behaviour. This too has been driven by factors relating to coronavirus pandemic. March 2020 was when the new legislation was enacted, allowing the police to deal with coronavirus breaches in relation to social distancing and the various regulations that have been brought in over the past year. And there had to be somewhere that this was recorded, and it's in antisocial behaviour. So there has been huge increases across the country, across Lancashire and across East Lancashire, and Burnley's increase has tracked very much in the same sort of rate. This obviously, I think, spiked during the first lockdown, and then once restrictions began to be relaxed, it fell away, but has remained approximately double to recorded levels of ASB prior to the lockdown and the pandemic beginning. And this has been noted across Burnley Council, other agencies such as social landlords, and like I say, across the county. Some of this is driven by direct breaches of coronavirus regulations, but it's, again, similarly to the issues around burglary, it's very much driven by changing people's living arrangements now. Such as more people are at home for longer, and there's been a marked increase in calls and concerns around neighbour disputes, noise, those sorts of issues. But it's very much very much similar to the every other district within the county. So proposed activity for 2021. Burnley, in conjunction with the rest of Lancashire, is involved in an application to reaffirm the county's white ribbon status. In fact, I can confirm that our action plan has just been submitted in the last few weeks, so we're just waiting on confirmation on Burnley's part of that. And there'll be a series of events and initiatives going forward as a part of that commitment to the white ribbon status. Coordinated programme of alligator review will take place during the next calendar year, and this will look at the performance of schemes, and it will be carried out by officers from Street Scene, who will look to identify those schemes that maybe fall below the expected standards, and look to bring them up back into standard, or alternatively look to utilise those resources elsewhere. We still have a very long list of applications on file from members of the public wishing to join the scheme. And alongside that, there's been further funding as part of the capital programme to approximately 6 new schemes during the next financial year. Following on from successful adoption of new technology to aid the council enforcement teams around noise nuisance, we will be looking to broaden that and take a review of the equipment and investigating resources we have for other kinds of crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour, so around video monitoring, cameras, that kind of thing. And we will continue to support the development and delivery of key pan-Lancashire strategies around reducing reoffending, violence reduction and knife crime, as well as locally defined priorities through CSP and MATAC. And just lastly, financial implications and budget provision. And I think this is where our position within East Pennine Lancashire CSP, as with the Safer Streets bid, it gives us the ability to bid for and be successful in bidding for much larger pots of funding to, really make a difference in tackling some of the issues that we deal with within the communities. We will be looking and supporting Pennine Lancashire over the coming months with the potential for round 2 of Safer Streets funding, so more information for that will be coming out as well. and we will be supporting the strategic assessment during 2021. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Richard. Extremely comprehensive report. Any members have any questions for Richard? Cosimo's got a hand up.
Yeah, Richard, that's really comprehensive. Thank you very much for that. And I know how hard the work, the group works, bringing everything together. I just got a query. There's been a knife amnesty knife box outside the is it Four Stones, whatever the building with the orange bits is called. How effective has that been? It's been there for ages now, and I've never heard it ever reported. I never heard of any reports coming at the MATAC when I was chairing it, and I just wondered if anyone else had made any inquiries.
Effective in what manner? What in terms of receiving knives?
Effective, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, if it's just sitting there, I mean, I have to say it's right on one of the gateways into the town. If it's not collecting things, it's not giving a particularly good. It's not exactly good publicity for Burnley when the first thing you see coming around the roundabout is, drop your knife here. That's
right. So, which site is that again? Because through the
is it Forster? Is it called Forster? I'm sorry, I always get the name of the building wrong. It's the one with those kind of orange bits on it by the central roundabout by the
right, the Calico.
The Calico,
the
Calico, yeah.
The Calico building, yeah.
Those have been installed as part of a violence reduction unit funding initiative across the county. So every district has received those knife amnesty bins as part of a county-wide approach to dealing with possibilities of knife crime, and they are utilised, and there have been knives received. It's not something that's particularly prevalent in Burnley, certainly compared to other districts in the west of the county, but it's something that we're adopting as part of a county-wide approach, as well as education programs which go through schools around knife crime, the dangers of knife crime, and a much more coordinated approach across the county.
Just a quick secondary. I mean, is that the best place for it?
I suppose it was felt that it needed to be somewhere that was public. It's very much in keeping with other knife amnesty bins in other districts, away from, not in residential areas, in easily managed areas. I mean, it's certainly something that we would be able to review if it was felt that there may be other appropriate locations.
I just, I'd just like to put that forward. Perhaps it could be reviewed. I mean, to be honest, people walking past, I don't think there's that many. I mean, not that we want it to be, so public that it makes us look as if we have a problem where we obviously don't. But it is a bit of a funny place to have it just outside there. I've always felt. I think B was nodding in agreement there.
I'd agree, Cosy, and I think we will look at it. I noticed it the other week. Yeah, we'll look at
Sorry, I've been dying to ask that, and I've always forgotten. Thank you very much.
Okay, got a list of speakers to come in. Councillor Commis, Tom, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Just in regards to the reduction in burglary, were we starting from a particularly high point? You mentioned we had a bigger than average drop. Were we higher than neighbouring boroughs previously?
Burnley does have higher rates of burglary than it sits at the upper end of the league tables for Lancashire. Across the county, burglary and most crime statistics have been falling consistently over the last 10 years or so. So where we were compared to previous years, again, these have been year-on-year reductions, but this year has been a particularly marked reduction, but in keeping with other districts in terms of your general crime, but Burnley's acquisitive reductions have been much greater.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I've got Andrew Newhouse.
Thank you. I saw a report from Burnley and Padiham Police the other day about the bin on Centenary Way. There were 49 blades collecting from it at the last collection. Some pretty nasty looking blades. I mean, you can find the pictures on the internet. I think obviously people are using it, whether it's the best location or not, maybe. I mean, it is a visible spot, isn't it, obviously? But that is, again, a highlight to actually using it, isn't it, I suppose? But it is obviously used. We could do with, obviously, maybe putting it in a more secluded location, but it is obviously something that we need to keep up. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Marcus, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm very surprised that Councillor Townley didn't seem to know what happened in the building she was trying to describe, the Calico Ringstones building. But anyway, leaving that aside.
Because I did know what it was called. It was just I'd forgotten what the actual name of the building itself. I knew it was Calico.
Oh, well, that's a relief. I actually think it's a very good impression. To be quite honest with you, I think it says that this is a town that's trying to do something about something which is a problem. I think it'd be entirely wrong to hide it away or put it in a less visible place. People know what this is. The footfall might not be very high, but certainly people pass it in cars. I certainly knew where it was because I drive past it. So I don't think it should be moved at all. And, you know, we delude ourselves if we say that we haven't got a problem with knife crime. We do. Everywhere has a problem with knife crime. We're not in the same league as parts of London, as parts of in a city of Liverpool or Manchester. But we do have a problem. Too many young people do carry knives, and too many people do get stabbed. So I think that we should leave it where it is. I think it actually sends out a good sign that we're trying to do something about it. And I most certainly don't think that we ought to sort of stuff it behind a corner somewhere where nobody sees it. Leave it where it is. And it sounds like the scheme's working. I haven't got the figures that Councillor Newhouse has dug up. But it sounds like it is being well used, and we should encourage this to continue.
Thank you, Marcus. Any other member?
No request. Joe B is signalling. Councillor Foster.
Okay. Come in, B.
On this one, I was looking at the top for the unmute. Can I go back? I was going to raise the knife crime one in the fact of how serious an issue is that in Burnley, because I think there seems to be a bit of, and I know Councillor Newhouse has said 49. I'd like to know over what sort of period that was, those knives were collected, sort of thing. And I do think that we do need to look at where it is. I think there's advantages and disadvantages, and I think we need maybe to have another look at that. But can I think about this town centre offending group? Can I just ask about that in the sense of it is linked, I think, with what you said about the next one about high risk offenders being targeted as well. I'm just wondering what happens with these people who are being given the orders and things. Are they being then worked with? And I mean, it says about putting them into different services. So are they both linked to those two?
Yeah, the Town Centre Offender Group is a group that we've had for a number of years in Burnley that's been operating and identifying its sort of priority offenders, whether that's through shoplifting or any other issue within the town centre. And it is attended by partners from multiple agencies, so housing, drug and alcohol services, as well as enforcement services. So there is that holistic approach to trying to deal with them. Obviously, some of these individuals are in the hard to reach category. Yeah. It's not, you know, they're not quick fixes. So it is a combination of using legislation and court orders to try and encourage and compel engagement in services, as well as the human aspect. Now, the Mossaville project is something that has developed over the last probably 18 months, 2 years, and is a county-wide initiative run by the police. So there's 4 different, there's an east, south, west and north Lancashire. The East Lancashire one is far in advance of the others because it's just something that individually we all seem to do in our districts anyway, so we've been able to pick this up a lot quicker. And again, it's looking at those offenders not just through the eyes of enforcement and probation, but looking at them by what can other support services provide, and try and, if necessary, fast track individuals in through these services, whether that's through assisting with housing or removing the blockers that stop them from stopping offending. So, you know, what compels them to reoffend, and remove those, and that's the approach we take both locally and in our sort of East Lancashire hub that we have. But enforcement is still an option, because there are still individuals that it is appropriate to use enforcement, and we have a range of civil powers through the council or criminal powers through the police, and it's coordinating and, you know, working out the best way to deal with each individual. But it's looking at it on a case management basis, so each individual is dealt with in the best possible way.
Yeah, thank you for that, Richard. And then just one other thing about the, it was good around the domestic violence to see about getting the theatre group in to do sessions and things. I just wonder whether it could have been, or can future ones be opened up to councillors, because it's something that we come across, to keep our awareness raised, and to keep it at the forefront of our minds, particularly with COVID, because that is very much one of the areas that is very, very challenging at the moment for lots of people. So I just wonder if that would have been possible.
Absolutely, and indeed it was the intention when they were originally planned, because they would all be in person and interactive, that one would be dedicated for councillors. Unfortunately, the manner that it is delivered is not appropriate to current times, which is why we've been trying to work with the providers to come up with a digital approach to doing that awareness raising. But it's absolutely,
yeah. I just wonder, Richard, you said there that a separate one was going to be for us as councillors as well as the workforce. Why don't we bring together, so that, because often we talk to people on the phone and everything, but we don't actually often be in the physical space with people. And I just think it would build relationships and make us more of a team, councillors and workforce, rather than we seem sometimes detached and just be ringing them up to say, can you do, will you, and all that.
Yeah, I think it was more for practical reasons, in terms of work hours. So, you know, to make it the best opportunity for councillors, then we were looking at doing one that was outside of work hours. But obviously now situations have changed, so we'll be looking at that again to see how we can continue the programme, because we got to do one day with 2 sessions and it was really well received, so we want to finish that very much so.
Thank you, and the report is excellent. Well done.
Thank you, Richard. I echo that. I've got Councillor Campbell wants to come in. Paul,
thank you, Chair.
say something?
Just to follow on from what other people have said about the knife bin. I appreciate the numbers as Andy's given them. And again, I did have the same question as B, like what period is that over? But I have thought this, as Councillor Townley has, for a period of time. I'm not sure where it currently is the best place. At the roundabout where people stop, you're coming into Burnley to shop or to eat, or for the first time to sightsee or anything, it's right there. And I think it might, as Mark said, it might be a positive thing that we're dealing with it. But regardless, I'm not sure if I visit a town when I'm driving in, that's the first thing I want to see. Further from that, I question its location for accessibility. I'm not sure how anyone with a knife is able to get there easily. If you've got a car, there's nowhere to park. I mean, I was suggesting they come in by bus with their knife to drop it off. It just doesn't seem the best location for accessibility if you did want to use it. And in my own experience, I have found a machete once in the bush, strange as that is. I called the police, said, what do I do with this? And the police said, take it into the local station, which follows on to my next station. I'm not sure why this isn't located near the police station. So if that's the advice the police are saying, come and drop it in at your local station, then surely if there was a knife bank there, that would be helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. I mean, I think we'll come to ourselves with Mick Cartlidge saying it'll be reviewed. I mean, obviously you can hear both sides of that particular argument as it stands. Thank you very much, as I said before, Richard, for a very comprehensive report. We'll now move on to item 9.
Chair, can I just confirm that committee is agreeing to note the report?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
The next 7 reports are all to consider and note the report. Obviously, these reports are going to full council. But we'll take them on that basis. Item 9 is the strategic plan report 2021. Rob Dobson.
Thanks, Chair, and good evening, members. The strategic plan sets out the council's objectives over the next 3 years, but we always review it annually. Section 4 of the covering report highlights the changes to the plan that was previously adopted by full council. The most significant of those, of course, relates to the impact of the pandemic and the commitments that the council has already made in its economic and community recovery plans to help the borough's residents and businesses get back on their feet as quickly as possible. So any feedback from Scrutiny Committee tonight will be reported to the executive before the plan is formally adopted or set for a recommendation at Budget Council. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. Any member want to come in on this?
No RTSs, Chair. Is B signalling? Councillor Foster signalling? Yes, she is, Chair.
Councillor Foster's got a finger up. Either picking or not.
Okay, thank you. It's only the sort of I'm not sure whether the minor points or not really till I speak with it. But under the first one about places, in the opening paragraph, of course, it says about long-term empty properties or properties. And then underneath, what do we commit to? Because we all know that the long-term empty properties cause a lot of distress within our communities, really, particularly when they're one on their own in different streets and things like this. But what do we commit to? I presume that will come under PL3. We will work with partners to improve quality and choice in the borough's housing stock. Will it become under there, or does it need to be more, what's the word I'm looking for, more focused around the long-term empty properties? I'd just really like to see an action on that, really, because I think it's very important for the future of the town, empty property, you know, looking and coming up with a solution. We've tried loads of different things, but I still think we need to keep going on that one.
Keep it. Rob?
Well, do you want to go on to the others, or will Rob answer that first? Or
Yep, certainly, Councillor, through you, Chair. So when the executive member for housing reports on what we're delivering upon under that particular commitment, he always or she will always make reference to actions being taken under the empty homes scheme. However, I'll make a note and report into the executive as to whether or not they feel it would be appropriate to have a separate commitment in relation to that.
Thanks, Rob. Any other member?
do you want me to? I have a couple of others, Andy.
All right, go on, B. There's nobody else wants to come in on this so far.
All right then. Okay, so under prosperity, we talk. It's about promoting Burnley as an investment opportunity and by improving travel connections. I just want to raise again, because what do we commit to? Again, we've talked over a number of years around the train station, yeah, and there are still areas of that that aren't very aren't just as good as what they could be, and I'm just wondering again where that fits, so that doesn't get lost about continuing, because we need that to really be at the top to attract people.
Rob?
Yes, again, from memory under PR2, that's where the executive member for economy and growth will report on progress that's being made with partners to improve connectivity. But you know, I'm aware from attending Scrutiny Committee that improvements specifically to the facilities at Manchester Road is a priority for members. Now, whether or not the council has any current plans to work with partners to improve the facilities in the next 12 months, I don't know, but I will take it back, speak to my colleague Kate, and see if there is the possibility that we can commit to something within the time period of this plan.
Thanks, Rob.
I still have another Andy. Is that
okay,
all
well,
right?
I've got Andy Fewings waiting to come in, B, so
All right,
make
well,
this
let
one your
Andy
last
go
and then we'll
first
move on
then.
to Andy.
Go on.
No, go on. B,
Me or
ask
Andy?
your third question, and then when you've asked it, I'll bring Andy in after you.
Okay then. All right. Well, this one's under performance. The first one is a request, of course, and that is about delivering the digital strategy. And it's talking about making this more efficient by getting more people on it. It's just a plea. It's just a plea that I think there will always be people like me who are not digitally digitally sound, or whatever you want to call it. Please just remember, not everybody is digital. We always, I think, need to have somebody who can deal with people like me, definitely. And then under PF4, I wondered if somebody could just ask me about, this will include, it's about delivering organisational development strategy. This will include embedding hybrid working patterns to improve productivity. I just wondered, is that about doing the different elements of working, because we've been doing digital and Zooms and people working from home? Is this all about looking at all that different aspect of working patterns now?
Yes, so I'll take the first point first for me, Chair. So there are no plans at all to reduce the current ways in which residents can make contact with the council. There will always be a face-to-face service and a telephony service. But what we have seen, probably because increasingly people who didn't always feel comfortable transacting with the council or with the bank or shopping online, they've been forced to over the last 9 months. And we've seen a huge increase in the number of residents that are transacting with us online. So I think the latest figures in the last quarter, it was about 75% of all transactions were done through the website. But just to reiterate, absolutely no plans to change face-to-face and telephony offers. On the second point, you're bob on there, Councillor Foster. It's for us to consider continuing to deliver meetings like this, should the relevant regulations permit, if members find this an efficient way of working. And certainly within the council, officers will be, I hope, thinking twice about travelling across to County Hall, if we can get officers that work in partnership, for example, with other districts and with the county council to have meetings over the internet. It's a much more efficient way of doing business. So yes, those are exactly the sorts of things that we're talking about when we're talking about hybrid working, so that people can work from home, from the office, wherever the most productive place to be is.
Thanks, Rob. I've got 3 people waiting to come in. Councillor Fewings, Mick Cartledge and Cosima Townley. Bring you in first, Andy.
Through them all as well. So just in terms of the actual officers' report itself, it's on page 31, paragraph 4B. it says the strategic commitment to review the structure of the council has been removed following completion of this action. And then the next sentence is members agreed to retain the existing governance structure. And I'd just like a bit more information about when a vote was taken to agree that. I know that I was part of a member structures working group and I attended a briefing. And at that member structures working group, it was kind of concluded that less than half the members of the council attended the external briefings with the trainer. The trainer was completely for what we'd asked for, was the conclusions. And then at the member structures working group, there was essentially a couple of strong opinions wanting to change to a committee system, stay the same, but the overall position seemed to be that there was system or moving to a new system. So to my mind, unless that meeting has happened that I've missed, or that there was no conclusion, and there certainly wasn't an agreement to retain the existing structure. Of the same section on 31, page 31, just around the cross-party working group on climate change being established. It's okay to come out of the strategic plan, but they've no resources to actually effectively be run for the last, because of the crisis and all the difficulties that we have with resourcing. But I think we should clarify that that's the case.
Andy, just apologies, Chris. Can you turn your camera off, Andy? I think we're having trouble hearing you. You can just save some bandwidth by muting your camera. Sorry, stopping your camera. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. It was just the last 4 or 5 sentences, Andy.
On this point, so it's page 31 4C. Okay.
Andy, you're cutting out. Your vocals are cutting out.
Still not coming through, no.
And it's Chris K. Can you hear me? We can't hear you.
He's saying move on and we'll try to fix.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Actually, Mick, I've got you down to speak next, so
yeah,
if you want to come in now, we'll come back to Andy later.
Thanks, Chair. I'll just be brief because I know we've still got a long agenda. Yeah, I just wanted to come back on B's point around Manchester Road Station. Yeah, we know that there's a project there in terms of development, in particular around the other platform and disabled access, potentially bridge over. We've been doing more work on that. We've had costings in, and we're sort of looking and waiting for the levelling up funding that's going to be coming out from the government, because it is a sort of shovel-ready project. So we'll be waiting for that, and that is the potential project we will be putting forward.
Thanks for that. Thanks.
Thanks, mate. That's good to hear. We did a scrutiny project on that, if you remember, a number of years ago. Yeah. Cosima, did you want to come in?
Just to agree with B, I've been working at the lateral flow testing site, and the number of people who do not have a mobile phone still is quite surprising. So I just wanted that to be noted, really. Of course, that's the only way they can get the results. So yeah, it is a problem for us as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any news on Andy Fewings, Chris?
I'm just going to ring him, Chair, and see if we can get him in by phone.
Okay, well, hang on then.
Chair, do you want? Apologies, Chair. Do you want to move on while I try and get him in? I'm just conscious it is a long agenda, as opposed to us having a break while we get him back in.
Yeah, that's fine. I think Luckman wants to come in.
Chair, just whilst we're waiting for Councillor Fewings, just to sort of address a point that Councillor Foster made with regards to face-to-face contact. I think Rob answered the majority of the contract we've got with Liberator, which commits them to maintain that face-to-face service, and the council's got a continued commitment in that regard. But to add to that, during the pandemic, we have retained the town hall front-facing service open. I think we're the only authority across Lancashire that has done something similar throughout the pandemic, and we recognise how important it is for people who are digitally disenfranchised or do not have access in other means to access key services such as housing. I just wanted to sort of just mention that, and that's been a great effort from our colleagues, really.
Yeah, could you pass that on, that we're very appreciative of the effort they've made, and the way they've made the reception area COVID safe and for everybody, but for keeping that welcoming and information hub open. It's been much appreciated by lots of people. So pass our thanks on, please.
I think we'd all agree with that.
Chair, Councillor Funes is just trying to dial in now.
Okay.
Chair, it looks like we're having no joy. Can I suggest we move on, and we'll continue to try to get it back into the meeting?
Okay, and as far as the questions that Councillor Funes has got, perhaps you can drop them through to Rob, and we'll get a separate answer for him, just to make sure that he gets all his answers to his questions. Okay, moving on to item 10. This is Howard Hamilton Smith. It's Revenue Monitoring Report 2020-21, Quarter 3 to 31st of December 2020. Over to you, Howard. I think you've a few now.
Thank you, Chair. You're going to fed up of hearing my voice tonight, I think.
Well, it's very good to have the briefing beforehand, I always think. It's great, that.
Yeah.
Hopefully a lot of people will have picked this up in the briefing anyhow.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. It's as you said, Chair, this is a report up to the Quarter 3 for the current financial year for revenue monitoring. So there's not much change from Quarter 2. So we're looking at a net overspend of 1.09 million, which is offset by 1.04 million that we're getting through sales fees and charges income compensation scheme, which gives a net overspend position of 49,000. We've got a 1.1 million pound estimated collection fund loss. As I mentioned in the briefing, that the government are providing a 75% income compensation scheme for collection fund, which will pick up the majority of that. The other 25% the council will have to fund separately over the next 3 financial years. And we've also received, we're pointing out that we've got some new burdens funding in recently, about 135,000, which hasn't been factored into these figures at the moment, and that's because we're looking at the requirement from that for staffing resources going forward, but that'll be reported in the next report. And happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Howard. Any member?
Councillor Foster, Chair, is indicating.
He's waving a pen again. Yes, Bea?
Yeah, I do apologise. It seems to be my voice tonight as well, Howard. But it's on page 54 under green spaces and amenities, because I just think our green spaces do an incredible job. And it's the second paragraph down about salary savings that we're gonna I think cut out 2 vacant posts from what this says. I'm not just sure, but also the last sentence says that we had agency costs. So I'm just wondering what those agency costs were, if we're saying that we're not having posts, but yet we're getting agencies in for some. Just explain it to me, Howard, please.
So that's okay. Yeah. So there have been some vacant posts within the unit during the year. I think those have been replaced. One has been replaced at the moment. The other is remained vacant. The agency staff costs relate to seasonal staffing that they get because they don't need them all year round. So they get them in the summer months. So there's been an additional cost of that. So they've brought in some additional cover to offset those vacant posts. So it's just around those.
Yeah, it's that I've known it seasonal in my head. That's where it's because it's used agency this time. That's what's got me right. Thank you for that.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank you, Pete. Any other member?
No, Chair, no requests.
Okay, so the Scrutiny Committee note that report. Item 11, Howard again, Capital Monitoring Report 2020-21, Quarter 3 up to 31st December 2020. We're down to consider and note this report. Over to you, Howard.
Thank you, Chair. So this is to give the current position on expenditure and resources up to the end of Quarter 3. So we're looking at a decrease in the capital budget of 2.9 million, down to just less than 14.5 million. The reason for that is two main schemes that contribute to that, and that's reprofiling them into the next year. So one of those is Northwest Burnley Growth Corridor for 1.4 million. The LEP has already approved the underspend to be moved forward into next year. And the other scheme is the building infrastructure works for 1.4 million. The majority of that relates to Timely Hall, because that work will be undertaken next financial year, with a small element taken this year. And also the crematorium roof is being moved into next year. Happy to take any questions on those, Chair.
Thanks, Howard. Any member on the Capital Monitoring Report? I'm not picking anybody up.
Apologies, Chair, it's Chris Gay. No other questions. Councillor Fewings can hear the meeting, so he's going to stay in the meeting and he will type any requests or any questions that he might have. He can hear us, but unfortunately we can't hear him or see him, but he is listening to the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Fine, Chris. So you'll pick that up and transfer the questions in, will you? Thank you. So the committee note the Capital Monitoring Report. On to item 12, Midterm Financial Strategy 2022-23 and 2025-26, incorporating the reserve strategy. Howard again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is to provide an update to cover the period 22-23 to 25-26 from the strategy that was approved at full council as part of the budget setting process in February 2020. So it's just an update, looking at a high-level overview of funding changes, looking at the impact that the current year's budget has going forward, and also looking at the gap analysis for the MTFS period, an update of the risks and the use of reserves, and to update on monitoring and review going forward. So it's looking at some of the uncertainties that we've got around funding going forward. As we mentioned in the briefing earlier, the government will push some of the fair funding reviews and the spending reviews back into 22-23, and the business rate reviews moved into 23-24. So he's looking at what impact that will have on the budget going forward. So we've had three scenarios when we're looking at the budget gap: one with a 4% reduction in core spending power, one with 2%, and one with 0%. So the budget gap ranges from 3.1 to 5.1 million, and that's shown in there. It looks at some of the other risks that we've got going forward as well, particularly around valuations for pensions, the impact of the economy, the impact on business rates and council tax going forward, and also looks at the reserves position of the council and sets out what the use of those are over the medium term. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Any member?
No one is indicating, Chair.
I realise questions came up in the pre-meeting briefing. No questions, okay. So the committee consider and note that report. Item 13, the revenue budget for 2021-22. Howard again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is just looking at setting the net budget requirement, the council tax requirement for the coming financial year, and increasing council tax by 1.99%, which effectively increases Band D from £306 up to £312. It goes through the paragraph 12, shows the summary of changes between the 2021 budget and the 21-22, and also the government funding assessment that brings it back to the 15.4 budget requirement. It goes through the budget settlement. Interestingly enough, this is based on the provisional settlement, but we had the final settlement through last week, and it was about £52 different. So there's no change to the figures that are included in here. It contains a brief summary of the savings that have been proposed to balance the budget in Appendix 3, the growth proposals in Appendix 2, and detailed further in paragraph 19. And then it just goes on to look at the impact again of the one-off funding for business rates and council tax, and covers the council tax collection and collection fund deficits as we go through. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Howard. Any member?
Non-requesting, Chair.
No.
Yeah.
There's Councillor Gordon Lishman.
I think Councillor Martin is also signalling, Chair.
Okay. Gordon, do you want to come in first and then come on to Tony?
Yep, okay. Thanks, Chair. A few specific points, really, just to bear thinking about in the wider context of the budget. Just a point of detail, which is essentially about the capital element of the budget, but it's actually about the revenue implications that I wanted to raise the point. There is general agreement that post-COVID, we're going to face a recession, and that is likely to have a significant effect on unemployment in Burnley. In that case, it seems to me that anything we can do to put the emphasis in capital projects and other spending on initiatives which create jobs ought to be a high priority. And I would simply ask that that is taken into account. Secondly, the area which is covered by the economic recovery strategy puts a lot of emphasis on innovation, attracting new business and so on. I think it's important that there is enough flexibility within our overall budget that ensures that the officers of the council and the leading members of the executive are not financially constrained from going to seek new investment and new support, particularly in terms of jobs within Burnley. And that's not something to be covered as a separate item, but I think it's worth flagging that there ought to be that flexibility. Thirdly, the fund for the business hardship fund, particularly for the post-furlough period, are we making any explicit assumptions about how that support will be provided, which is to say as grant or as loan or potentially as investment in a company? And I think we should consider all of those possibilities. I think we have those powers as a principal authority. Have we got to the stage of thinking about that range of options? And finally, I know I'm reflecting something that Howard has referred to elsewhere as well as here, but I think it's particularly a point for the Scrutiny Committee. Howard has identified key areas of risk. I think it will be helpful also to identify the key indicators related to each of those major areas, and for there to be a way of measuring what was happening in relation to those risks with a trigger point which would ensure that an issue would come in an extreme case to full council, or in other cases to the Scrutiny Committee, to look at those changes in the overall risk level as things continue to develop. It is going to be a very big challenge for all of us over the next year or two to manage the situation, and I just think it's important that we have early, thorough and immediate access to information which draws out major risks as they develop and they occur. One example that I've used that Howard has agreed with in the past relates to the loss of business rates income because companies go out of business. And those are the sort of indicators we ought to be looking for as we assess what's happening in the council in future.
Thank you, Gordon. I'm sure Paul Campbell, who's Chair of Audits, who's sat in this committee, was listening to, especially to those last comments you were making there. Tony, want to come in?
Well, just a comment, really. I do agree with the 1.99% precept that we're proposing, because I think it's important we try and get as much take out of the council tax as we possibly can, given that we're so heavily reliant on all sorts of other funds that the government can pull at a drop of a hat. I know we've got the business rates under indexing multiplier grant I've never heard of before, the lower tier services grant, the council tax support grant, and that's not counting all the stuff that they've put in for COVID. And it does seem to us that to me, that the problem we've got is we're chronically underfunded for an authority with the responsibilities that we've got. And I look forward to the day when Sir Frank Layfield's report that was produced for Peter Shaw when he was a member of Harold Wilson's government back in 1966, I think it was, about the replacements of the then council tax, the then rate system, will be implemented. Thank you.
Would you like to come back in on that one, Howard?
Yeah, I will do. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll pick up Councillor Lishman's points first. As part of the hardship fund, we are looking at how that will be delivered. It will be by direct grant, but that doesn't rule out any other possibilities, and that will be reviewed as we go along. The risks, as Chair said, that they're picked up by the Audit and Standards Committee and reviewed regularly, and we do monitor that on a regular basis as we go through the year, and any new risks or changes to risk are flagged and they're reported through as a matter of course. As far as the 1.99% increase in council tax, I agree with Councillor Martin that it is good, and there is that much uncertainty in the budget going forward, and we have introduced some recovery on the economic and community recovery initiatives, as well as looking at sort of the impact of any ongoing financial pressures as well that appear in the budget for next year. So I think that is essential that those go through just for the budget. And as far as the one-off items of funding go, I agree. I think if we looked at the tables in the MTFS report, it does show that Burnley fare quite badly against the England average as far as funding goes from central government. So, and that is reflected in some of these one-off grants, in that it takes us back, so we're not in a worse position for last year. So where some authorities have had quite a large increase, we're getting grant funding in to maintain the level of funding we received in the previous financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Howard. I know members of the executive are looking in tonight. We'll move on to item 14, the capital budget for 2021-22 and the capital investment programme for 2021 to 26.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is looking at approving the capital budget for the next financial year, 21-22, and setting it at just less than 18.8 million. Now that takes into account all the schemes that have been reprofiled from the current financial year. There are no new schemes in there that haven't been reported through in previous years as part of the capital investment programme. So there's nothing to report on that side. Appendix 1 shows an overall summary of the capital investment programme, including the programme for next year. Appendix 2 shows the proposed use of receipts and external funding, third-party contributions. Appendix 3 has a brief description of the individual schemes that are included within the 21-22 programme. Then Appendix 4 contains the capital strategy, which we've reviewed and updated in light of changes to legislation, best practice and funding during the year. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Any member?
No requests, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that report, Richard. Sorry, Howard. Moving on to item 15, 2021-22 Treasury Management Strategy and the 21-22, 23-24 Prudential and Treasury Indicators.
Thank you, Chair.
Over to you.
Thank you. So yes, this is the Treasury Management Strategy for 21-22, and it also sets prudential and treasury indicators for the years 21-22 to 23-24. So it's been updated to reflect capital plans that we've included in the previous report, the MRP policy and any investment strategy going forward. So we've updated the list of counterparties to include Burnley College, that was approved as part of the mid-year report this year. And we've also increased the lending thresholds for the money market fund and to other local authorities. That was also approved as part of the mid-year report. Prudential indicators set the limits that the council will work within the next financial year, and these will be reported through monitoring during the year. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Howard. Any member?
None received, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.
Got off quite lightly there, I think.
I think so. It's a surprise.
Okay, you can relax now. Moving on to item 16, scrutiny review groups. Now, we actually have a project, a scrutiny project that's ongoing at the moment. Vice Chair Marcus Johnson has picked that up and run with the ball. I'm going to bring Marcus in briefly, and then returning to what Cosima said earlier, I'll then move on to the markets and tell you what my suggestion would be. So over to Marcus, just to tell us where we are with the housing and Calico working group.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There has been a bit of a lull, if you like, over the Christmas and New Year period. But at the last meeting, those members who are on the working group will recall that we produced basically a work programme, a number of areas of concern, and we decided we wanted to meet senior management of Calico, the people who actually take the decisions. I'm pleased to be able to say that Mark Beach, who is the managing director of Calico, has agreed to come to a meeting of the working group, which will be sometime in March. It's a question of finding a date in the diary. I appreciate March isn't a particularly good time because people start to think about elections, but these things don't happen overnight. But it would be my intention that we will have something on paper by the end of this municipal year.
Thank you, Marcus. That brings everybody up to date, and especially the people who are on that committee. That committee will keep going forward and report back when something concrete has happened with it. The second thing I'd like to sort of introduce, and I'm only doing it verbally because we need to go on from here, if you will. We had a maintenance report on the market, you'll recall, from the last agenda that we had. Members jumped in and were taking the debate into a different area altogether, other than local maintenance. Now, I know the question of Burnley Market Hall has been around, well, since I had the economic regeneration portfolio in the 90s. And I think every administration since has faced its problems. And it's had its good periods, and it's had its less than that. I did, as Cosima said, receive an email from her. It was pretty comprehensive. You pretty much laid down where you were coming from, Cosima, and I'll take that on board. I think what we need to do is, because this is a very important decision as far as the future if you like, at the town centre and all the things that go with it. And I know it's a fluid scenario in as much as there are other things going to happen in and around where we're talking, which may impact on it. So this is what I think we should, I mean, argue with me if you like, but this is how I'd like to take it. We'll call for volunteers for a working group. I'd like to push the parameter of this discussion as wide as possible, so that everything that affects it, or if you like, even the side issues that come to play, are taken into consideration. We'll ask for volunteers, and this will come out from democracy in the next couple of weeks, so that the subcommittee can sit as a group to try to work out the criteria and dimensions of what the scrutiny group will be looking for and how it would actually operate without coming to any predetermined decisions. I mean, I've heard people have conversations with me who are vehemently against it and are vehemently for it. I'd like to put that to one side and let's go looking. Let's examine the whole subject. And let's start off with a blank page and an open mind, and let's see where those arguments go. I think what I'd like to try to do is to get as many volunteers as would like to come on board and have the first meeting to set the parameters of the discussion and the criteria that we'd work under. We need then to bring that back to full scrutiny for them to agree with that on behalf of the scrutiny committee to go forward and then work on this during the summer. Now, I mean, this is not something you would do on the back of a fag packet, let's put it that way. This needs officer support, and I realise that. I'm going to have to be talking to officers about providing that. But I think what I'd like to do is a good and proper job so that by the time we've actually finished the scrutiny report, we can bring it back, get the agreement of all the scrutiny committee, even people who haven't come on board, that it's the direction that needs to be gone in, feed that into the executive as a scrutiny recommendation for them to come. If everybody thinks that's fine, I'd like to hear if you see any holes in it, because I've tried to think it through, then I'm open to discussion. So that's where I think we should go with it. Openly put that open to any member. Cosmo's you got a hand in the air?
Oh, he's on. Yeah, no, we won't come to blows about this, Chairman, but obviously time is slightly of the essence, because at some point grant funding, which we could possibly apply for through government uplift or whatever, will come to an end with the end of any form of support they may think we need or don't need due to COVID. I also think there is slightly a danger of having too big a working group in that it just becomes a talking shop. And I did think, and I'll leave this obviously down to you, but I was, as you say, I did put a pretty comprehensive request into you, and it might be a start to circulate that perhaps to the other members of the scrutiny. But personally, I would also like to put to offer my services on that particular, having brought it up on that particular work.
Thanks for that, Cosmo. I mean, as I look through it, some of the things that were in there were the way in the past that we've actually done scrutiny working groups. That was all. And in saying, rather than it be just to narrow down to 4 or 5 people or whatever the case might be, I wanted to throw it all so that everybody who has an interest within the 17 members of scrutiny can actually come along and give their opinion on that and feel, if you like, that the report that comes out of scrutiny is one that we've all had our 2 pence on, we've all had our input into, and if you like, it echoes the overall committee. Now, it may well be, because I know some opinions are already set for and set against. That's why I was saying, perhaps to try and approach it with an open mind. It won't be unanimous, I'm guessing, unless there's some fate plays a part. We'll actually come back, and this will come back to a scrutiny meeting and have to be thrashed out and probably voted on to go forward. But I think to make a start is essential. I don't want to be held hostage to fortune. I understand what you're saying, Cosmo, about the grant scenario. But this is a decision that's a once in a lifetime decision. And it may well be that we'd be stampeded into something which we may well regret. I'm not for this, I'm not against it. It's just basically a case of I'd like the decision to be made as far as in the best way that we can actually do it.
Chairman, if you don't mind me just finishing on that, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think we've been rushing anything. This has been an item that should have been, it's been ongoing
20 years.
25 years.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
So I don't think anyone's stampeding anywhere. I mean, as
No,
you say, a lot of the work has already been done. So it's a matter of people who are prepared to actually trawl through all the work that's been done and to give a well-argued assessment.
I agree. I agree. Anyone else?
Yes, Chair.
Marcus?
Chair, I really do hope that this is a comprehensive review. We've had, I hate to think how many reviews and God alone knows what else on the market over the years. And they normally come back with, let's refurbish this corner of it or that corner, let's redo a staircase. You know, they don't actually answer the central questions. We've got to be honest. The central question is this market viable? It's as simple as that. It's also got to ask, does it have a future? You know, is there a place in the 21st century or wherever we are, in the sort of circumstances we're going to find ourselves post-COVID, for a market which is very often doing what the supermarkets do, except worse? That's my view. And is there a need for a market? Is it fulfilling a special need? Now, most successful markets, Bury, Bolton, places like that, towns not radically different to Burnley, they found a need because they found a niche. Burnley market hasn't. It's basically, it's a crap Asda. And I hope that this working group will actually get down to the nitty gritty of what needs to be done. Should this market continue, or should we find an alternative use for the site? And I'd be very disappointed if I open yet another report telling us how wonderful it is and how we can refurb it by painting a couple of stairs.
Thanks, Marcus. I think the last two contributions have actually shown what I was trying to say in the first place. I think we're in danger of rerunning the first subcommittee meeting in this one, and I think it's one that we need to take away and bring back. But if members are happy, then we'll put the invitation out in the next 14 days, and then we'll hold a subcommittee meeting as soon as that's possible to bring the criteria and the parameters and all that sort of thing back to the full committee before we take it forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to move what you're suggesting.
You happy with that?
That makes a lot of sense. You'll all be very relieved to hear that because of pressure of time and everything else, I won't be able to volunteer my services.
Cheers, Marcus. Anybody else before I move on?
Can I just confirm then that you've proposed that and Councillor Johnson has also seconded that, and that is the agreement of the committee, that an invitation will go out and a meeting take place in the next 14 days?
There doesn't seem to be any dissent.
No. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Will they object to bringing it back to the full committee in March, and we can go on from there.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to item 17, the last item of the night is the work programme 2021.
Yes, Chair. This is it's Chris Gay. Sorry, just jumped there while I was coming back into me. This just sets out the items that will come forward to the March meeting, plus any updates or items brought forward from tonight's meeting, Chair.
Move it, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Marcus. Any other member? Looks fairly straightforward. You'll notice the Leisure Trust and the Food Safety, the ones that were left over are actually included on this before the end of the council year to make sure we cover everything.
Sorry, did Councillor Johnson move the report? Is there somebody, do we have another member?
Councillor Tynes has got a round up. So
Thank you. Thank you.
The queued up to second it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Safe journey to the kitchen.
Thank you, Chair.
Safe journey to the fridge to get a beer, you mean?
Thanks, yeah.
Good night.